Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah came into my office on a Tuesday morning, clutching a venti caramel macchiato in one hand and her phone in the other. She was 34 years old, successful by every conventional measure, and absolutely miserable. "I can't stop eating," she told me, her eyes welling up. "I know what I should do. I've read all the books. I follow the Instagram accounts. I meal prep on Sundays. But by Wednesday night, I'm face down in a pint of ice cream, and I don't even remember deciding to eat it." Does this sound familiar? Here's what Sarah didn't understand, what most of us don't understand, about our relationship with food. We are not living in the world our brains were designed for. Our brains evolved in a context of scarcity. Our ancestors spent their days foraging for berries, hunting for protein, and never knowing when the next meal would come. In that environment, when you found something calorie-dense, honey, ripe fruit, fatty meat, your brain released a flood of dopamine, that beautiful neurotransmitter that screams, "Yes, eat this now, this is survival." But here's the problem. We're no longer living in that world of scarcity. We're living in a world of overwhelming abundance. We are, as I like to say, cacti in the rainforest, organisms adapted to drought, now drowning in plenty. Walk into any American grocery store, and you're confronted with 40,000 different food products. Not just food, engineered food. Food that's been carefully designed in laboratories to hit what the food industry calls the bliss point. That perfect combination of salt, sugar, and fat that creates maximum dopamine release in your brain. Let me explain what's happening in your brain when you eat that cookie, that bag of chips, that perfectly engineered fast food burger. Imagine your brain contains a balance, a seesaw with a fulcrum in the center. When you're at baseline, the balance is level. When you experience pleasure, when you bite into that chocolate chip cookie, dopamine floods your reward pathway, and the balance tips toward pleasure. The bigger the pleasure, the higher the tip. Here's what most people don't know. Your brain desperately wants to maintain equilibrium. The moment that balance tips toward pleasure, powerful self-regulating mechanisms kick in, like little gremlins hopping onto the pain side of the seesaw to bring it back to level. These gremlins represent homeostasis, your body's relentless drive to maintain balance. But it doesn't stop there. Once the pleasure stimulus is gone, once you've swallowed that cookie, the balance doesn't just return to level, it keeps going. It tips an equal and opposite amount to the side of pain. This is what scientists call the opponent process theory. What goes up must come down. Every high has a crash. Every dopamine spike has a dopamine deficit. And here's where it gets dangerous. That dopamine deficit feels like craving. Sarah wasn't weak. She wasn't lacking willpower. She was experiencing a neurochemical reality. Her brain, tipped into a dopamine deficit state from years of highly processed foods, was screaming for another hit. This is the pleasure-pain balance, and it's the key to understanding why mindless eating has become the epidemic of our age. Now let me tell you what happened when Sarah stopped trying to white-knuckle her way through cravings and instead learned to work with her brain's pleasure-pain balance. First, we did something that terrified her. We pressed pause. I asked Sarah to try something radical, a 30-day reset from her drug of choice. For her, it was sugar and ultra-processed carbohydrates. No cookies, no ice cream, no drive-through convenience, just whole foods, vegetables, fruits, proteins, healthy fats. 30 days? She said, eyes wide. I can't do that. You can, I told her. And here's why. Abstinence resets the balance. When we stop flooding our brains with high dopamine foods, something remarkable happens. Those gremlins on the pain side of the balance start to hop off. The balance slowly returns to its natural level. And when it does, suddenly the simple pleasure of an apple tastes sweet. A perfectly roasted chicken breast feels satisfying. The natural reward system, the one we were born with, comes back online. Sarah experienced what every patient who commits to a dopamine reset experiences. The first 2 weeks were hell. She felt irritable, anxious, obsessed with food. She had headaches, she couldn't sleep. This is what I call the withdrawal phase. The period when the brain is recalibrating and the pain side of the balance is still weighted down. But by week 3, something shifted. Sarah woke up one morning and realized she felt clear, energized. The constant mental chatter about food had quieted. By week 4, she reported feeling better than she had in years. This is the power of giving your brain time to reset. But abstinence alone isn't enough, because we live in a world where ultra-processed, hyper-palatable food is everywhere. The modern food environment is not neutral. It's actively hostile to our well-being. So the second thing I taught Sarah was the practice of self-binding, creating barriers between herself and her drug of choice. Self-binding means taking action in the present when you're thinking clearly to prevent future behavior when you're not. It's Odysseus tying himself to the mast to resist the siren's song. For Sarah, self-binding looked like this. She stopped keeping ice cream in the house. Period. She pre-packed healthy snacks in her car so hunger didn't drive her to a drive-thru. She deleted food delivery apps from her phone. She took a different route home from work, one that didn't pass her favorite bakery. These aren't signs of weakness, they're signs of wisdom. They're recognizing that in a dopamine-saturated world, the only way to win is to change the game. The third practice I taught Sarah was perhaps the most important: mindfulness. Most of us eat unconsciously. We eat in the car, we eat in front of screens, we eat while scrolling, while working, while watching Netflix. We shovel food into our mouths without tasting it, without experiencing it, without even realizing we've eaten. This kind of eating is what I call dopamine stacking, layering multiple sources of pleasure on top of each other to get an even bigger hit. Phone plus food, TV plus food, social media plus food. But when we eat mindlessly, we rob ourselves of the actual pleasure of eating. The dopamine release happens, but we're not present for it. So our brains register the deficit but not the reward. We feel empty even though we're full. I asked Sarah to try something radical, eat with awareness. Just once a day, I asked her to sit down at a table, put away all devices, and eat a meal slowly. To look at her food, to smell it, to taste each bite, to notice texture, temperature, flavor, to chew slowly, to put down her fork between bites, to actually experience eating. Sarah resisted this at first. "It's so boring," she said. "Yes," I told her. Boredom is not just boring. It can be terrifying. It forces us to come face to face with ourselves. But boredom is also the space where awareness lives. When Sarah finally committed to mindful eating, she discovered something astonishing. She didn't actually enjoy most of the foods she'd been binge eating. The cookies tasted cloying and artificial. The chips left a chemical aftertaste. Without the distraction of her phone, she could actually pay attention to what her body was telling her. And her body was saying, "This doesn't feel good." Real food, a perfectly ripe tomato, a piece of wild salmon, a bowl of berries, suddenly came alive with flavor, because she was finally present to experience it. This brings me to the fourth principle, pressing on the pain side. This might sound counterintuitive, but one of the most powerful ways to restore balance in the brain is to intentionally seek discomfort. When we voluntarily press on the pain side of the balance, through exercise, cold exposure, fasting, or any other mildly painful experience, the brain adapts by tipping the balance back toward pleasure. I encouraged Sarah to start her mornings with exercise, not because she needed to burn calories, but because exercise naturally resets the pleasure-pain balance. When we exercise, we experience temporary discomfort, but in response, the brain releases endorphins, dopamine, and a cascade of other feel-good chemicals. The result? We feel better afterward, more energized, more balanced, more resilient. Sarah discovered that on mornings when she exercised, she had far fewer cravings. The dopamine deficit was filled not by food, but by movement. Her brain had found a healthier way to restore balance. The fifth and final principle I taught Sarah was radical honesty. Shame thrives in secrecy. When we eat in hiding, when we sneak food, lie about what we've eaten, pretend everything is fine, we reinforce the addictive cycle. I asked Sarah to start telling the truth, to herself, to me, to her partner. Not in a confessional, guilt-ridden way, but in a matter-of-fact way. I ate a pint of ice cream last night. I felt out of control. I want to understand why. When we speak our truth aloud, we activate a different part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning, reflection, and self-awareness. This creates what I call metacognitive space, the ability to observe our thoughts and behaviors rather than being controlled by them. Sarah started keeping a food journal, not to count calories but to notice patterns. When did cravings hit hardest? What emotions preceded a binge? What triggered the urge to numb out with food? Over time, Sarah recognized her patterns. Stress at work triggered cravings. Loneliness drove her to the kitchen. Boredom made her reach for snacks. But here's the beautiful thing. Once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. 6 months after our first session, Sarah came back to my office. She looked different, lighter, brighter, more present. I'm not perfect, she told me. I still eat ice cream sometimes, but now it's a choice, not a compulsion. I'm not running from myself anymore. This is what recovery looks like. Not perfection, not rigid control, but awareness, balance, and freedom. So let me leave you with this. Stop running from yourself. Stop trying to numb the discomfort of being human with food, with screens, with constant distraction. Turn around, face whatever it is you've been avoiding. Walk toward it. Because here's what I've learned from decades of working with patients struggling with addiction, compulsion, and the relentless pursuit of pleasure. The world is not something to escape from. It's something to pay attention to. When you stop running, when you create space for boredom, for discomfort, for the full range of human experience, something magical happens. Life becomes richer. Food becomes nourishing rather than numbing. You rediscover joy in simple pleasures, the taste of fresh strawberries, the satisfaction of a home-cooked meal, the connection of eating with people you love. The pleasure-pain balance is not something to conquer, it's something to understand, to work with, to respect. Your brain is not your enemy. It's trying to help you survive. But it's using ancient software in a modern world. When you understand how it works, when you learn to reset the balance, to create barriers, to press on the pain side, to eat with awareness, you give yourself the gift of freedom. Not freedom from pleasure, but freedom within it. The path forward is not deprivation, it's presence, it's honesty, it's turning toward life rather than running from it. Recovery happens day by day, like lighting lampposts down a darkened alley. You may not see the progress in the moment, but when you finally stop and look back, you'll see the whole path illuminated, the light of your progress, the return to balance, the rediscovery of yourself. That's the invitation. Will you accept it?